Welcome back. We are on verse 21 in chapter 19. And actually the break yesterday really was a good place to break because these next few verses kind of segue into the next chapter and explain the next chapter. And he surely did show unto the prophets of old all things concerning them. So he's speaking of the Lord. And also he did show unto many concerning us. Wherefore it must needs be that we know concerning them, for they are written upon the plates of brass. And as I mentioned in the first part of chapter 19, he obviously studies these plates of brass, which contain the 5 books of Moses, among other things, the genealogy, etc. Now it came to pass that I, Nephi, did teach my brethren these things, and it came to pass that I did read many things to them, which were engraved upon the plates of brass, that they might know concerning the doings of the Lord in other lands among people of old. And again, Nephi, is trying to appeal to their intellect. He's trying to give them information that has been really meaningful to him and has affected him. But not all of us digest spiritual information in the same way. Some we can feel the Spirit through our intellectual findings, but others that doing that intellectual path to God fizzles out real fast. We can receive information, but for some reason Nephi can't see that his lectures are not working, and that information for them is not getting through. You know, that there should have maybe been another path. Now we're grateful for this information, and we're grateful that with the things that he shares with us. But for Laman and Lemuel, it just is falling on deaf ears. And again, as the Book of Mormon is said to be written for our time, and if we honestly took a real good hard look in the mirror and in our heart, we would realize that we align much more with Laman and Lemuel. And if that's the case, we should be examining these characters and really studying these characters, the things that make them tick, the things that make them hesitate, the things that don't get through to them and why. But this information, and you wonder if another approach had been taken by Nephi, you know, as some of these friends of Jesus monks do, cry the gospel with your life. Don't even, that Francis of Assisi quote, preach the gospel at all times, but use words only when absolutely necessary. Of course, I'm embellishing there and paraphrasing, but the point is that these people have found that when they have gone into the most dire circumstances, some have even been voluntary prisoners whose identity was completely unknown to anybody but the warden there. This is, for example, in Switzerland. And they live among the prisoners to preach the gospel through their life and their acts. And since they would go to these extreme places, like a prison, for example, to do such things, to win people over who probably words mean nothing to at this point in their life. Their lives are probably full of broken promises. So they can't hear anything you're saying. And you just wonder if one of those friends of Jesus monks had been on the trip, if things had been totally different. Because he didn't say a word, but all he did was cry the gospel with his life. And so, but this is Nephi. He's young, he hasn't had children, or he barely has had kids. And they're probably so young that he can't imagine that anything would ever go wrong in their life. And so he's inexperienced, He's trying to be a father as a younger brother. He's trying to be a father to his older brothers. And he's probably doing the best he can. But on the other hand, for Laman and Lemuel's sake, you wish that maybe Nephi had been a little more, Lehi, their dad had been a little more involved. But then again, we read that he's on his deathbed. What can he do at that point but just pray till the end, So the whole situation is it's hard because it's a younger brother trying to be a father to his older brothers and not being as wise, And guys, Elaine, come here. Not being as wise as, the years have afforded him. So anyway, he's doing the best he can. And he goes on in 23, and I did read many things unto them. So he's reading. On the other hand, I can't imagine how annoying. There was no TV then. So every night, here's a Nephi with the brass plates. Wah, 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 wah. And you just don't, Laman and them, they just don't get it. They don't get it. What are you saying? So many things have to be distinguished by the power of the Spirit for them to get through to us. Otherwise, they're just noise. They're just, a cacophony of commandments that are irritating and annoying. And so, you can imagine the tension that is building because Nephi is trying to get a point across and they can't hear a word he's saying. They cannot relate. They do not have that power of discernment and they are not pursuing it because this whole miscommunication that is happening now with this family is sad. It leads to generations of tragedy. And the thing is they didn't have somebody else from the outside to say, hey, you know what? Time for, a little powwow here, let's have a sweat lodge and talk things out. Your family is like the tension, it's about on the 10 on the tension scale, you cut it with a knife, but they were alone and they were isolated. And all they had was each other. So you can just imagine the amount of tension that is building and how this tension in both families, once they split from each other, how it just grows and festers and becomes bigger than it ever was in the stories that are handed down. And that this lasts for generations and costs hundreds of thousands of lives. And you just think back to this moment of them around the campfire and Nephi reading to them again the scriptures, trying to get through to them with just words. And I did read many things unto them which were written in the books of Moses. So again, this confirms what I said earlier about him reading Deuteronomy chapter 28. But that I might more fully persuade them to believe in the Lord their Redeemer, I did read unto them that which was written by the prophet Isaiah. For I did liken or compare all scriptures unto us, that it might be for our profit and learning. The Bible is the number one bestseller of all time. There's no doubt. And you will find that most people of education have been educated in the Bible, not necessarily at all from a spiritual standpoint, but from a literary and historical standpoint, because a lot of our literature, a lot of our sayings, a lot of our beliefs and our values, everything comes from this book. So the scriptures are not just a set of rules, not at all. They are, in fact, I would think that if you approach any literature really from as though it were a character study, Like if you were reading the Book of Mormon or whatever, a character study. The characters always reveal so much more. What they do and their motivations, what they say, how they go about things, always reveals so much more information than what the author can fill in. You know, he can't just sit there and say, you know, Johnny came home in a bad mood and was tired of the children misbehaving, and so he was going to give another try at reading the Bible to them. Usually it's just, you know, Dad came home and we all ran to the living room because we knew we weren't there for Bible study. There were going to be consequences, you know, so you got to kind of sum up a whole situation real quick. And so the narrative gives us only so much, honestly, but character study, you know, these characters that we read about in the Old Testament, through the New Testament, and fortunately those who are more open to information, the Book of Mormon, these characters reveal so much about a person's learning, a journey of learning. You know, you can see where Nephi needs to do better, but he's so young, so you know that, wow, he's going to dazzle us probably because he has that relationship with God, so he's going to be cultivated and he's going to be refined by the Holy Ghost. So it's only up and up from here for Nephi, as rough as a stone as he may be. But in the Lord's hand, he'll be smoothed out. So the point of the likening is just super important, where he says, I did liken all scriptures unto us. And that's what we are encouraged to do also, is to identify with these characters, study their motivations, study the things that may be hurting them, study the things that are standing in the way between them and truth, between them and a closer relationship with God. Study those things, because in those things are so much is revealed. And here we see a situation where Nephi is following after them and just reading to them. And it doesn't mean anything. Okay, I have to let these dogs out. They are being ridiculous. I apologize in all the confusion of letting the dogs out. I jumped right into the next chapter and totally forgot the last verse, and we can't have that. So I'm coming back here real quick to record this verse. Wherefore I spake unto them, saying, Hear ye the words of the prophet. Ye who are a remnant of the house of Israel, a branch who have been broken off, hear ye the words of the prophet, which were written unto all the house of Israel, and liken them unto yourselves, that ye may have hope, as well as your brethren from whom ye have been broken off. For after this manner has the prophet written. And again, as I was talking about before, you know, Nephi's trying to persuade them using words, and words are not coming across, but with just this verse, you know, here's Nephi in the camp, you know, hear ye. You know, he's going around trying to, you know, prime them for this experience of reading the scriptures or hearing the scriptures, and they don't have a relationship. And so that's just what's so sad about this verse is, I know this is just all he knows to do. This is what works for him, you know, and too often we're trying to treat people in their woes and in their shortcomings and in their lack of understanding the way we would treat ourselves, not really recognizing that they have their own personal valid experience and approach to life, and maybe we don't have all the answers. And our failure to communicate is just our total different views of life. And our job at that point, before we say another word, would just simply be to find a way to communicate and to understand one another before anything else is shared. Because nothing else would be important if there's no understanding. But now we're going to go on to the next chapter, which is chapter 20, and it is Isaiah 48. So this is Isaiah 48, and at some point down the line, it would probably be interesting to read side by side the chapter version of Isaiah 48 in the Book of Mormon, because it appears that Nephi is pretty much just copying down word for word whatever scroll he has, or whatever's on the brass plates. So he's just copying and pasting, the old fashioned way, the pick and the hammer that he had, whatever he did to work on the plates. But it would be interesting to compare, because there are differences. And so if anybody is listening and is not familiar with the Book of Mormon, but they're familiar with the Bible, you're going to go, wait a minute, that's not how it goes. So there are differences between the chapters, the ones on the brass plates and the ones in the New Testament today. They're not like massive for the most part at all, just subtle things, and I'll point one of them out. Verse 1, hearken and hear this, O house of Jacob, who are called by the name of Israel, and are come forth out of the waters of Judah, or out of the waters of baptism, who swear by the name of the Lord, and make mention of the God of Israel, yet they swear not in truth nor in righteousness. So first of all, he's differentiating who he's talking to. He's talking to the house of Judah. So he's talking to the people of Jerusalem. And this is, of course, where Lehi left. And just before I continue, I just want to point out, remember that this is the first chapter that he wants Laman and Lemuel to hear. He's like, okay, this is, talk about likening. We're going to do some likening right here. So listen up, So know that this is aimed at those two. This whole chapter, which would be in some ways aimed at us if we're identifying with those characters. And we are come forth out of the house of Judah. So these are the people who remain in Jerusalem, who I described before the level of sin. Idols are always involved. And you wonder, what was it about idol worship that was such a big hit? It sounds so boring, going in there, throwing flowers at a statue or something. It sounds like, how could they get confused like that? You think that, but then on the other hand, then you remember when Moses came into the Pharaoh to, ask him to let my people go, and he threw down his staff and it became a serpent. Why then the magicians of Pharaoh came, and each one of them threw down their staff, and it turned into a serpent. And the story goes, God's serpent, devoured the serpents of Pharaoh's magicians, but still, that they could turn their staffs into snakes, that's a pretty incredible magic, and that's a pretty incredible power to have. And so that ability to perform magic must have been somehow incorporated in the worshiping of the idols. It must have been a Vegas type situation, like sometimes you got a reaction, sometimes you didn't. So it became almost addictive. And so they felt like, maybe I will go make that offering of whatever, or I'll go participate in that pagan ritual just in case, because I fear for my crops or whatever. And you just wonder, how appealing was idol worship, because it just seems, from our point of view, it seems so boring and ridiculous. But on the other hand, in many ways, we're not that different. We worship things that we think are going to give us results or make us feel better and about ourselves, and those things become almost like gods to us, dictating our behavior and dictating our time and what we investigate and what we believe. I mean, almost to the point where some people that ascribe to, they don't come in the form of statues now. They come in the form of websites and YouTube channels. They come in the form where they're asking allegiance to their doctrine, and they become as idols because they are worshipped as though that they will give you something in your life, meaning, direction. They'll give you what you need. And so we have our own form of idol worship, not to mention the idol worship of celebrities and, that's like the infantile one, But yeah, we do offer our allegiance to things that are akin to idols. So they're speaking to South, to Judah, to the South Kingdom here, and saying basically you're huge phonies. You act like you're of the covenant, talking about baptism and swearing and all that, but you don't stay, you have nothing to do with me. You're over there, worshiping idols. And so what you're swearing, you're not swearing in truth, and definitely not in righteousness. So, and much of this chapter, he goes on and just calls them out. Nevertheless, they call themselves of the holy city, Jerusalem. And they do not stay themselves upon the God of Israel, who's the Lord of hosts. Yea, the Lord of hosts is his name. They don't stay with him, because just in case over here, he heard, his neighbor down the street offered such and such to this God, and boom, his crops are growing, and so it's hard really when you think about it. When you live from hand to mouth, how hard it would be to resist any superstitious, anything that just might help, When you're desperate, I do believe, especially when times are hard, people are more willing to try anything. And, that's not an excuse for idol worship, but it was just common among the people that surrounded them. They were surrounded by this. This was not a practice that they usually went and dug up. It was something that was readily available and they could, participate in. Apparently, they do not stay themselves upon the God of Israel, who is the Lord of hosts. Yea, the Lord of hosts is his name. Behold, I have declared the former things from the beginning, and they went forth out of my mouth, and I showed them. And I did show them suddenly. I told you what was going to happen, and I had to hurry up and produce it, unless, then he says, because then you'd give credit to the idols. So I had to rush in there, fulfill my prophecies, let you know who's talking. And he says, and I did it because I knew thou art obstinate. Obstinate is beyond stubborn. You can't just say it's stubborn. Obstinate is what you become when you've been stubborn for a real long time. It's after you've been begged and pleaded and told and advised and all the rest, and you still refuse to change your course or to change your mind. Obstinate is beyond stubborn. And thy neck is in iron sinew. That tender part that, that we want to protect. And it's where they would, make an offering very often. That neck is really our vulnerability, that ability to be opened and to be childlike and to be leadable and to be believing. But these people, they had a neck that the sinew, the ligaments, they were made of iron. There was no bending. There was no yes. There was no looking to the left or to the right. There was no looking up. And there certainly was no looking down in humility. These people had a gaze that was fixed and was immovable. They were as crusty in the third eye as it gets. They could not see. And thy brow brass. So here's the other thing, when their forehead is frozen. They don't show any emotion. They don't feel any emotion. They are without natural emotion. They are stoic in ways that is very negative. They're heartless, really. And I have even from the beginning declared to thee, before it came to pass, I showed unto them, and I showed them for fear lest thou shouldst say, mine idol hath done them, and mine graven image, and mine molten image hath commanded them. So he's saying, I had to do this. I had to find a way to prove to you that it was that that was doing all these miracles. Thou hast seen and heard all this, and will ye not declare them? And in declaring, it's just, are you going to deny these hard facts? Really? Are you not going to admit it? And that I have showed thee new things from this time, even hidden things, and thou didst not know them. They are created now, and not from the beginning, even before the day when thou heardst them not, they were declared unto thee, lest thou shouldst say, behold, I knew them. So this is actually a really interesting verse. They're created now and not from the beginning. So these hidden things, or these new things, you're just so curious what that means. They are created now and not from the beginning. Even before the day when thou heardest them not, they were declared unto thee. So before, but then he does a switch-o change-o here, and he's saying, even when you didn't hear them, that even before the day that you didn't hear them, they were told to you. So lest you should say, so what is he saying? That they should know better on the inside? They know what is right and what is wrong, and they know things that didn't need to be declared to them personally, because they apparently was declared to them a long time ago. I don't know, it's a very strange verse, but it's a fun one. Yea, and thou heardst not, yea, thou knewest not, yea, from that time thine ear was not opened, for I knew that thou wouldst deal very treacherously, and was called a transgressor from the womb. And this is a tough one, because called a transgressor from the womb, that contradicts the doctrine that I was taught, and that the Book of Mormon certainly later teaches, that children are born innocent and pure, and awful is the wickedness that would say otherwise. And so a transgressor from the womb was like, oh, so I can only hope that he's referring to the curse that God said is upon them, that curse of not knowing their God and not following him. That curse that's going to follow them and torment them and offer them some level of discomfort in this world. They'll never feel at ease in this world until they accept the Savior, the scriptures say, until they accept the Savior. And no matter how successful or how well known or how brilliant, they will always have that nagging sense that they aren't welcome here. And that is going to be a nagging curse through the generations, it says, until they accept the Savior. So I can only hope that that's referring to that curse that is followed down by means probably of the values and the stories and the narratives that they're passing down to their children, perpetuating those same values and that same attitude and that same behavior generation after generation after generation. Ensuring that they toe the line and not go or explore anything else, and in fact creating an enmity between them and the community at large around them to ensure that their narrative is perpetuated. Thou heardest not, yea, thou knewest not. They're not listening. You can't, once you're fixed in a narrative and you're sold on it, like you're like hook, line, and sinker. Because if you're hook and line, there's still hope, and if you're hooked, there's just lots of hope. But if you're hook, line, and sinker on that narrative, you can't hear anything else. And you can't know anything else. Everything else is a lie. Everything else you can't hear. And from that time thine ear was not opened, for I knew that thou wouldst deal very treacherously, and what's called a transgressor from the womb. So treacherously, they're cheaters. They're going back on their covenant. Nevertheless, for my name's sake, it's not namesake here, and for my name's sake will I defer mine anger, and for my praise will I refrain from thee, that I cut thee not off. And this is just really interesting language. I know that it sounds like God needs more praise and that he needs his name to get bigger, but I choose to believe there's so much more to this. Nevertheless, for my name's sake will I defer mine anger. It's almost like that when you're reading my name, you will see the patience that I've had. And hopefully you will know I have the same for you. And it's almost like he's saying, for the sake of my name, my good merciful name, I'm going to defer my anger so that when this narrative echoes through time, they'll know how good I am. And for my praise will I refrain from thee, that I cut thee not off. Again, that they're refraining from the praise. That they are refraining. For my praise will I refrain from thee. So he's saying that he will, again, show his mercy and show his goodness. And let that be a testament to the future generations, that I cut thee not off. For behold, I have refined thee. I have chosen thee in the furnace of affliction. And in verse 10, there's a difference. There's a reference in the Isaiah and the Bible to silver. And there's some confusion as to how it should be translated. Refine thee as with silver, one version says, some versions say, or it just says as silver. I refine thee as silver. But that is left out in this translation. And maybe it didn't make sense to Nephi, and he took some liberties there. Who knows? Or maybe whoever had the book before him did so. Whoever recorded on the brass plates. But for whatever reason, it's not there. For behold, I have refined thee, I've chosen thee in the furnace of affliction. So in other words, it was when your progenitors were having a terrible time that they were chosen. And they were having a really hard go of it. And that's when this relationship started. You were chosen because that you were crying to me. For mine own sake, yea, for mine own sake will I do this, for I will not suffer my name to be polluted, and I will not give my glory unto another. For mine own sake will I do this, I will not suffer my name to be polluted. He's not going to allow idols to take credit for the things that he does. I mean, I would think, what kind of God would allow that to happen anyway? Don't let me get confused here. Make sure you're not allowing any of that stuff to go on, because that would be confusing. And he's adamant about it. He's adamant that he is not going to suffer his name to be polluted, and he's not going to give the glory unto another. He's not sharing any of his goodness of who he is with any other idol or anything else. Hearken unto me, O Jacob and Israel, my called, for I am he. I am the first, and I am also the last. I am Alpha and Omega, he's saying. I am everything. I am everything. And I am God. He's saying he is essentially telling you, I am God. I am the supreme being. Mine hand hath also laid the foundation of the earth, and my right hand hath spanned the heavens. I call unto them, and they stand up together. And again, he's saying he created the world. He created the earth. He spanned the heavens, and that all creation is at his command. That when he calls unto creation, they stand up together. Not only the earth, but the heavens. Everything is at his command, except for our hearts. Isn't that something? All ye assemble yourselves and hear, who among them hath declared these things unto them? The Lord hath loved him, yea, and he will fulfill his word which he hath declared by them, and he will do his pleasure on Babylon, and his arm shall come upon the Chaldeans. So he's saying basically that he is going to take, these kingdoms like Babylon that have crushed you, that have stolen people from you, these people, they're at his command as well. And the Chaldeans, another people that got absorbed in the Babylonian culture, they're going to face their consequences at some point. They will face their consequences. He's saying that all these things are ultimately in his hands. And also our enemies, I suppose. I would like to think that would extend it to us little guys, I know this is talking about a whole people and kingdoms and nations, but you would like to think that our enemies were ultimately in his hands. Something to pray for. Anyway, also saith the Lord, I the Lord, yea, I have spoken, yea, I have called him to declare, I have brought him, and he shall make his way prosperous. And on the footnote, it says Cyrus. So, and this refers to Cyrus the Great, and he was king of Persia that is actually quite honored in the Bible because he is seen as a Messiah who set most of the people free from captivity. He liberated most of the Jews. I have brought him, and he shall make his way prosperous. Come ye near unto me. I have not spoken in secret. From the beginning, from the time that it was declared, I have spoken, and the Lord God and his Spirit hath sent me. And thus saith the Lord thy Redeemer. So interesting. And we'll just stop right at this verse, but thy Redeemer. It's just so powerful that they are told they need to be redeemed, and I always think of that coupon, redeemable for 30 cents or something. This is good for 30 cents. And, in our life, our coupon would read, this is good for the life of a God. Each individual coupon for life. And that word Redeemer, it's just, wow, you wonder what they were expecting, the Israelites. What were they expecting a Redeemer to be and to look like? And then along came this simple day laborer, dressed in not the fanciest clothes, with dirty feet, and from a podunk town and a podunk place. And it just wasn't what they were expecting. It was probably what no one was expecting. And so that's why the scriptures are so valuable, because, it'll help you with those surprises. Because there are many more prophecies in the book of Isaiah about Jesus. And they will help you with those surprises and those unexpected things. And suddenly the scriptures will ring something true and recognizable. And they become a memory of something that is currently happening. So when they are etched in our heart and our spirit, as the saying goes, they really do become so valuable, and they do help prepare. But I just wanted to remind you that you're an incredible child of God. And that I just can't express enough faith in you. And I know that whatever setbacks you've had, that you will just rise like the phoenix from it and shake it off and reveal those glorious feathers, as corny as that sounds. But I'm grateful for the opportunity I have to do this. And if only you knew how hilarious this was right now. I'm all by myself in this room. here crying. Because I'm thinking I'm talking to you. And I just wish you could just feel that big hug right now that I had for you, that I have for you. And I just hope that if you're worshiping, it's in a place where you feel that hug all the time, every time you go. That somebody gives you that big, big hug. And I'll talk to you again soon.